So one of the most intimidating aspects about programming in React isn't React itself. It's the toolchain and the ecosystem that is required to do any serious React programming. Now, if you want to, over on the React site, you'll see that they have a starter kit that will run your code through some scripts that do most of the lifting for you, including the JSX compilation, where JSX is this little HTML-like syntax that you drop into some of your JavaScript functions. But of course, web browsers can't run JSX directly, so you either have to have a script in your page that will convert it for you, or what people do in production, real-life React code bases, is they will turn that JSX into the equivalent JavaScript version beforehand. Now, as we're busy compiling code anyway at this point, turning JSX into regular old JavaScript, frequently React developers, being forward-thinking, like to utilize the latest and greatest ES6 features. Now, the problem with using these latest features is often you have to have a pretty modern browser to use it. If we go to Can I Use It, you can see different supports for JS, HTML5, and different features. And while if you have a very modern version of Firefox or Chrome or any other modern web browser, you can use most, if not all of it. By the time this video hits you, it's possible that all the mainstream browsers will have 100% ES6 support. Last I checked, they're at like 99.999. At any rate, most of your users, well, even if most of your users actually are using the latest and greatest browser, you're still going to cut out a sizable percentage of your user base that isn't using the latest and greatest, and they won't be able to run your code. So a solution to this is something called Babel, which is a JavaScript compiler. It takes your ES6 features, such as here we have an ES6 arrow function, and compiles them to the equivalent ES5 version. So you're writing ES6, and they like to call it transpiling. You're transpiling it to ES5 code, so that way it can work on browsers that are fairly old. Additional tool that we'll be using is something called Webpack. Webpack is going to do a couple different things for us. For one, it's going to run your code through Babel, so Webpack and Babel work together. It's going to run your code through Babel. Babel is going to be what turns your JSX into JavaScript for one, and for two, it's going to turn your ES6 features into equivalent ES5 features. One more thing. Typically when writing JavaScript, the only dependency management you have is script tags. And if you wanted your scripts to run in a certain order, let's say that script B uses script A. Inside your HTML file, you actually have to go script A, script B, and get those in the proper order. And you'd have to resort to dirty tricks such as using immediately invoked function expressions, because by default there is no file scope in JavaScript, in order to make sure you don't get bleed through between your different scripts. So it's going to seem unrelated at first, but if you've heard of Node.js, Node.js has had a lot of impact on front-end development. And the way that it's done that is Node.js introduced a new type of scope called module scope, where every file or module also has its own scope, and then you explicitly export things out of those to be consumed by other files. Webpack is a tool that not only allows us to break our code up into different modules and consume them sort of like we would in Node, but it's also going to run, as mentioned earlier, these transformations. So while this tool set is great and very powerful, it can be a little confusing, and there's a lot of moving pieces to try to learn at the same time you're trying to learn React. So before going into the React particulars, let's take a look at the toolchain setup, examine the different pieces, and see how we can optimize it for both development and for production deployments.